Hey everybody, fantastic Tuesday to you. I'm happy to present once again my friend, the fantastic auditor with the city of Oakland, Michael C. Houston. How you doing, boss? As I like
Doing
to call my friends.
well. Thank you, Zenny. I'm doing well. Glad to be here.
Hey, without any further ado, let's get right to the matter at hand, and that's the fantastic audit report you released here. Uh, and it is the title, as one can see, Oakland City Auditor says grants for food access questionable. Audit raises doubts about the effectiveness of the City of Oakland's 500,000 and 700, excuse me, and $175,000 grants to improve access to healthy food for its most vulnerable residents. Poor management and oversight of grants to Saba Grocers Initiative and its fiscal sponsor prevented the City of Oakland from ensuring taxpayer money was well spent. That is an incredible mouthful, an incredible story. What's going on?
Yeah, well, it starts with I guess back during the COVID pandemic era, the city was receiving lots of money from the feds, from the state, to provide essential services to the public who were in need at that time. Um, the COVID-19 CARES Act dollars. It began with the CARES Act, and the city was receiving all this money and passing it through to direct service providers. And one of those direct service providers was the Saba Grocers Initiative, who received a $500,000 grant from the city back then in 2020. Um, then the city's sugar sweetened uh, beverage tax advisory commission. I believe that's the name of the body.
Yeah,
Uh,
that was Annie Campbell Washington's baby. Yeah,
oh,
when
okay.
she was a
Yeah.
District 4 council member. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Mm. Yeah. So, and at their recommendation, the city provided an additional $175,000 later that year um, to provide nutrition services to the community. The biggest aspect, or the highest profile aspect of the program that Saba provides, is debit cards. So you get these debit cards that are redeemable at the different privately owned stores within the Saba Grocers Initiative network. And there are 26 of those stores. Uh, 26 of the stores, you could use the debit cards for during the $500,000 grant. The cards were redeemable at those 26 stores, and the cards were redeemable for 13 stores as part of the $175,000 grant. And so folks from the community were able to buy, to use these debit cards to use at these stores um, with the support of Saba stocking them up with fresh food. So another part of the grant was that the city was subsidizing Saba to provide refrigeration cases at these stores, at the smaller corner stores that weren't already equipped um, with the refrigeration cases, providing these refrigeration cases so that Saba could stock them up with fresh fruits and other nutritious foods. So that's the story. That's kind of the bundle of service. There's some other smaller matters, the other services too, that was part of the grant agreements between Saba and the city. But the main ones were the debit cards and the refrigeration cases.
And you said that the audit found poor management oversight of grants. Can you enlighten us on that?
All right. So what we found was there was very little oversight of these grants. So this money was given out during a time of emergency, and what we learned was that the Human Services Department at that time, which was the grant manager, or the city department responsible for oversight of the grants at that time, did not really provide much in the way of grant oversight. Um, and so in the audit, we point to several examples. There was monitoring and site visits that was contemplated in the grant agreements That didn't occur. There was we have several examples in the audit of documentation being insufficient in describing the purpose of expenses that Saba sought and it sought and received reimbursement for. So there were a lot of expenses that were kind of vaguely described or not described at all. But yet Saba was able to request reimbursement for those expenses. And then the city reimbursed those expenses without questioning them. We also had
Hey, so it's like they were using the city as a sort of a piggy bank.
Well, yeah, but the grant agreement did outline or did have that expectation that Saba would get reimbursed for legitimate expenses connected to the bundle of services that it was to provide to the community. The problem was, in my opinion, in the audit team's opinion, was that none of those claims were really many of those claims were not well supported. So, we have some examples in the actual audit report, and I believe we have some in appendices of the report where we need this, get reimbursed for an amount of money in service of or related to salaries or equipment or refrigeration cases. But then lots of questions were not answered as far as, well, how much did each of these units cost, or where did these goods and services, where were they directed, who benefited from them, things like that.
So it sounds like, I mean, it says that 9% also that of debit cards activated through the $500,000 grant were never used. And you write, which means that these cards worth $22,500 in potential fuel assistance never benefited Oaklanders. And yet the city still paid Saba and its community partners for activating and distributing these unused cards. Is there any way to recover those cards?
Well, that's an interesting question. One of our recommendations was that the city administrator should consult with the city attorney's office to identify opportunities to identify opportunities for being made whole, right? Yeah. Because and we will follow up on that recommendation and all the other recommendations in the report. But yeah, we found lots of problems with these debit cards, which was actually the reason why we began the audit in the first place. We received lots of complaints from members, lots of complaints. We received multiple complaints from anonymous whistleblowers. And the complaints were around this debit card program. And debit cards are inherently risky, right? Because it's super liquid. You can use them very freely wherever they're accepted. And in this case, these cards were accepted at 26 stores as part of the $500,000 grant. What we found was that the cards, even though there were, the cards were promoted to be about purchasing fresh food and nutritious food, the cards could be used for sugary foods, junk food, maybe even batteries, liquor, things that were generally sold at these stores. Many of these stores were like corner stores or, have a where they sell like junk food, right? Mm-hmm. So that was a big concern for us, is the lack of controls. These cards are redeemable at these places that don't necessarily specialize in nutritious foods. And then when we crunched the numbers, our first observation was that the city had never asked for the records. So my team went and asked Saba for the records and received the transaction records. And that's how we were able to find everything that we did. But our concern was, why was the city not scrutinizing or analyzing the transaction data? Because I think that's an important part of grant oversight. But when my team analyzed the transaction data, we learned, 9% of the cards were never used. And that is also that's problematic for the reasons that you kind of just stated, which is that represents money, that represents foregone benefit
Yeah.
for Oaklanders, right? But it's also troubling because as part of this agreement, partner organizations were paid to distribute the cards. So the city of Oakland is paying these partner organizations and Saba partner organizations to distribute cards that were not even that were never used, and that presents some other concerns that maybe the cards were never even distributed in the first place.
Wow. So there's help me out because all right, that means that there's a stack of cards somewhere, or maybe the stack of cards were never even made. What can you speculate as to what? Because what's going because the common person hearing this would have this view that there are these cards that have been released, but they didn't go in any hands, right? So how do you think about that? How should we think about that?
It could be, and due to the scope of our audit was so long ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about 2020 and 2021.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be too late to really be able to look for the current status of these cards.
Mm-hmm.
But that is a concern, is that perhaps the cards we don't know this, but the cards could have just been set up in people's names just because there was an incentive to set up these cards, because the compensation structure was such that folks are paid to distribute these cards. What we found
what you're basically saying is that they could have simply made these cards knowing they were going to get money for them, and then, well, hey, the cards don't go anywhere. Look at that, right?
That could be.
Oh man,
and that's why we were very careful.
Man, sorry.
Oh yeah, no, but that's exactly right. Which is why in the audit we were very careful to avoid using the word distribute in terms of, we may have used that word, but the cards are supposed to be activated and distributed to needy Oaklanders, right? We were careful to not use distribute very widely because we don't know that the cards were in fact distributed. And the city never did any work to confirm whether or not the cards are distributed. And the city, and another finding too, was even if they were distributed, there were, like, let's just say that they were distributed, there was nothing in place in terms of eligibility standards, requirements, to make sure that these cards were landing with people who most needed them. So, I mean, there were so many concerns with these debit cards, and it was a program fraught with risk.
Oh my lord! And then you go on in the report to write that the grants, like, not only did the grants not likely reach Oaklanders in need, but that you wrote, even though this audit was about 2 grants to a specific service provider, my office gained valuable insight into the city's grant administration and use of special tax revenue, 2 important activities which will inform our planning of future audits. Can you explain that?
Right. Okay. Yeah. So, so to the first point, as far as special revenues or special taxes, we have a lot of those in Oakland, right? Money that is supposed to be used for specific reasons. The voters pass these, and the city is supposed to use them for specific purposes. And some of them were mandated to audit, right? So the legislation itself requires the city auditor to audit, on a periodic basis, right? But some of them don't have that. So what I was alluding to there was, yeah, this is a risk citywide that money that's supposed to be targeted to specific purposes, we have to be vigilant to make sure that it is actually being used as intended. For instance, the sugar sweetened beverage tax, I still don't understand the nexus between sugar, like the legislation was about mitigating the ill effects of consuming sugar sweetened beverages.
Right.
And yet, what we found during the audit is money was given to Oaklanders to spend at places that sell sugar sweetened beverages. And it doesn't make, like it doesn't really make sense to me.
Was it? I'm going to speculate that the persons doing it thought they were fighting a hunger problem, perhaps.
That's what Saba, that is, Saba says that we need, Saba meets the community where they are. So there are many food deserts throughout the city of Oakland, um, uh, where people don't have access to full service grocery stores. And Saba comes in and provides the infrastructure at these small corner stores that are part of the Saba Grocers Initiative so that they can sell fresh food, nutritious food to community members. And that is happening. Like, we actually, even though it was years after the scope of the audit, we went to these different markets and saw, the refrigeration cases. However, and we point this out in the audit, there's no work. There hasn't been any research to show that that is really working. That having these cases at these privately owned corner stores, that is really changing consumer behavior. That people really were using, debit cards to buy fresh produce just because, these refrigeration cases were provided. So, and that's what I'm getting at. So that's the
Just set up this box as opposed to as opposed to having a freestanding business you can walk into that's marketed, right? Where, it's obvious when you go into, you're buying this type of food that will benefit you in this other way. Am I wrong?
right. Yeah. So, like, because, like, so I think what you're saying is one policy um, prescription to address food deserts would be to set up places in food deserts that sell nutritious foods and vegetables, right? But this one was it wasn't that. What it was is, let's provide infrastructure to these privately owned stores, um, with the theoretical understanding that maybe people um, will buy fresh foods or nutritious foods there.
Hmm.
But the city hasn't ensured that that's really working. Um, and so that's the piece I was talking about with the special taxes, like the sugar sweetened beverage tax. Um, I the nexus to me isn't very clear between Saba giving this money to Saba and then advancing the ideals that are outlined in that legislation. But with regard to the grants, because that quote that you just read, I think it just really speaks to a lot of problems in shortcomings in terms of the internal controls in our city bureaucracy to make sure that the grants and that are carrying out the services that they were intended to carry out, and that the city is really getting what it's paying for. So that was a concern.
And you close by, and I'm sensitive to your time. In my opinion, before proceeding with executing any pending grant agreements, the city of Oakland should carefully consider the lax controls and performance issues identified in this audit and implement this audit's recommendations immediately to make sure grant funds are used appropriately. Have you received a call from the mayor's office since this was released, or the city administrator?
I have not yet heard from the mayor's office. We did.
She has been a little busy in defense of her since.
She's been busy. The whole city's been busy. I think right before I logged in here, they were actually trying to pass the budget, or considering that the city council was considering the budget, right?
Yeah.
But no, but yeah, I haven't heard from the mayor, the city administrator's office. So we did share our findings with the city administrator and the city administrator staff. and they
Is there any
usually,
person over there that is responsible for, bringing in your observations and then say, okay, how can we, implement this? How can we do this?
yeah, it depends. So the way we do it is the audited department, or the auditee, or the department that is responsible for the program that we're auditing. Um, they're generally the ones who we direct our recommendation to.
Yeah.
This is an unusual situation because human services used to be, during the scope of our audit, they were the ones responsible for oversight of these grants. However, since then, that function was moved over to the city administrator's office.
Oh,
So
interesting.
even though a lot of the issues that we found in the audit were based on what was going on, when it was under human services,
Mhm.
the auditee was the city administrator's office, because the city administrator's office is currently responsible for oversight of these grants. So yeah, and to getting back to that quote, it was just we found just an alarming lack of controls, and I feel strongly that it needs to be improved right now if we're going to be giving money out to grantees, to contractors to provide these essential city services. We need to make sure that we're actually monitoring and overseeing them.
As we close, a question. Speaking of oversight, does your organization have any oversight or evaluation capability of the Public Ethics Commission?
Well, the city auditor, the city auditor's office has the charter authority to audit anything in the city, including commissions. So, are you talking about are we authorized to audit the Public Ethics
I'll
Commission?
cut to the chase because I'm that guy.
Mhm.
There's a case of Leona Powell's 2 years old. It's been sitting there, and nothing's done. Then I get an email, private message from someone who is said to be a wife of one of the commissioners, saying that the Public Ethics Commission was the organization that triggered the contact to the FBI for the raid. And then Rena Webb wasn't the one who did it, but she was ready when it was her turn to talk. That was what this was written. Okay, I'm making all that public. And I'm thinking, okay, so where's Leona Powell's, complaint in all of this? Because you went to the FBI, but where's her complaint that you say now triggered this? Okay, and yet she's, upset because her experience there, she believes, in part triggered the cancer she's now fighting. And yet the Public Ethics Commission is slowing around on that, going to the FBI ostensibly, but they find time to basically subpoena people who are working on the recall, which really looks like, something from Hogan's Heroes. Okay, you ever watch Hogan's Heroes?
I can't say I know what you're talking. What Rogan's
Hogan's Heroes is a 1964 television program that featured a group of captured American soldiers in Germany.
Oh,
in Germany. Okay.
So World War II.
World War II, right. And they were dealing with, Nazi journals, the guy who played Colonel Klink and all this stuff. So I'm giving a very kindly, deliberately, partially jocular reference to conceal what I believe is an extremely much greater problem of abuse of power. And so I'm really quite concerned that and I just talked to Leanna the other day because I talk to her regularly, see how she's doing, her and her husband and her kids. And I'm really quite concerned that something's amiss, because even Nicholas Hydorn, the great executive director of the organization, said that because of the constricted budget controlled by the mayor, his words, not mine, they have to, pick and choose what they work on. But I'm thinking, okay, so by what criteria? This has been 2 years. But then you went from 0 to 60 in 4 seconds with this other issue of supposed money laundering regarding supporters of the recall effort. Something makes that it's one of those Arsenio Hall things that make you go, kind of situation. You know what I
You
mean?
understand that reference.
You know what I mean? So, but where are we, auditor, in terms of really cleaning up our city and what it does? I can go on and on and on about what I found. I'm quite concerned. Am I wrong? I'd love to be.
Well, I think unfortunately there's in terms, I don't really have a comment about the Public Ethics Commission specifically, but I am concerned by the fact that the Public Ethics Commission remains very, very busy because of all the ethical breaches that people are witnessing and bringing forward, and the same in my shop with the whistleblower hotline, which takes complaints of fraud, waste, and abuse. We get lots of those complaints, and a lot of them are super. I mean, we look at every one; they're super alarming. What we see in terms of what people are coming forward to us, telling us that is going on in the city.
Can you give an example?
I mean, we get the most common example is people committing time card fraud, right? Or people not. I mean, that's fraud, right? People clocking in and not really doing the work. That's a pretty common complaint, and we don't have the resources to investigate fully and close all those cases right away. It takes a long time. And so I do, and I believe that the Public Ethics Commission is similarly complaint driven. Sometimes it's hard to for the outsider to see what is informing the queue or what their prioritization looks like. But I can't comment, for them, but I do understand your concerns, right? And you are you have this media platform, but you're also a member of the public, so this represents a concern of the community as well. Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
I emailed and uncharacteristically received no response back from Nicholas Hydorn. I wrote about my concerns regarding their sudden shift in how they handled things. No response. I thought there's something wrong because I have evidence of them actually responding in a very kind way to my request for updates last year. All of a sudden, it's like crickets. There's something going on. I hate to say it like that, but I don't know of another way to put it.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's a lot going on in the city these days.
Yeah, and then meanwhile, Darren Graham and Ali Wilson of Oakland, which is a 501c3 that has an unusually close relationship to Oakland elected officials, and yet says it doesn't. I mean, in terms of even taking money from them, and their 501c3s are not supposed to be politically partisan, and yet they do it. And I filed a complaint against the IRS about them. The IRS attorney said they started working on it. I can't explain the time frame. But I'm really concerned about the lack of a bully pulpit or kind of a way of saying, hey, look, you guys need to stop doing X. Because these organizations say, hey, you're doing something, including Oakland side, they're known for that. Oh, you're doing something wrong. But then in terms, they're doing something wrong, and yet they got money from, and I got the photographs. Trevor Reed, Dan Kalb, Lauren Taylor, this is in late 2022 when the event was held, Carol Fife, and who am I leaving out? That's the group. It was a quorum, which is a Brown Act violation, by the way. This is at John Bliss's house.
Oh, so you're saying they could be having a serial meeting discussing business outside of the official.
It was a fundraiser for Oakland side because they're ostensibly losing money. All 5 council members went. Lauren Taylor told me, I asked him point blank, I said, you give money? He goes, well, I might have given a donation. I don't know if it was entry fee or what. He hemmed and hawed. I thought, you know what? He did. And then they hide who supports them. Yeah, and so it's and they're known for example, they got money from William Fitzgerald, who's is a manager on a number of progressive organizations. I consider myself progressive. They call me right wing. They only call me right wing because I'm a smart black guy. They can't like follow exactly what I'm saying because it's technical. So suddenly it's like, oh, you got to be right wing because you talk too much. You know what I mean? Seriously, that's how it's. If you drill down, really, that's what it is. It's like he's a policy guy, he's a wonk guy. Ah, right wing. Like, give me a break. You know. So anyway, they really have this hand in glove relationship between Oakland side and city side and Oakland elected officials who call themselves progressives, and the money goes to them. So now here we have a situation. They're getting $200,000 for a simple FOIA violation. That's today. Okay. I'm thinking
Oakland side is getting $200,000.
Darwin Bongram and Allie Wilson filed a lawsuit because the Oakland police were slow in responding to this FOIA complaint. Okay, great. They go to court, they win their case, but then they go to appeal and win that. But the original award was $121,000, but then it got ballooned almost $200,000. Why isn't it like $25,000? You know what I mean? Because that has to come out of the city's pocket in the middle of a deficit. Oh, for a FOIA violation, a Freedom of Information Act violation. Seriously? Am I wrong? I'm happy to be somebody say, is any wrong? It's like great that somebody can get enough money to buy a little Mercedes.
You know, I'm an auditor, so I'm just processing this, and I'm going to be slow to come up with a super conclusive statement about that. But I think I'm following your concern.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Enough said. Hey, sir, I gotta cover you back.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm not able to make a phone call at this time, but you can ask me to place a FaceTime call.
Oh, Siri, that's very sweet of you, but thank you very much. No. Don't you love artificial intelligence?
Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah, I know. I love it. Hey, so stick around in the background. So anything else you want to add, by the way? Hey, what's the hotline number for people out there? Is it a physical phone number or email?
You know what? There is. I know that OaklandAuditor.com provides a link to it. Maybe if I could just right now go. So our website is OaklandAuditor.com, like I just said.
Yep.
And I haven't memorized the whistleblower phone number, but I'm cheating right now. The phone number is 888 329 6390.
6390.
And that is available 24/7, 365 days a year. Translation services are available. So we encourage folks, if they suspect that there's fraud, waste, or abuse, mismanagement occurring within the city of Oakland, or affecting city of Oakland resources, or involving city of Oakland employees, or contractors, or officials, to please let us know by submitting a complaint.
Thank you, sir. Hey, stick around in the background, folks. Subscribe to Zinni62 on YouTube, and bookmark ZinniReport.com, Oakland News Now Online.com, among others. Did you know we have 108 websites under our control as a corporation? Yeah. All right.
108.
All right. That ends this stream, folks. Stick around, sir. Thank you.